Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about FK and overlapping action and follow through. We're also probably going to just instinctively, because it is connectively tied to a hierarchy, we're going to be talking about arcs a little bit. So first let's talk about what FK is and what a hierarchy is. So if we look at our this is our rig we're going to be working with on the upcoming project. You'll see it renders relatively well. And it's just sort of a fully animatable rig. We can animate directly onto the mesh. So you can see we can move this object around however we want to, rotate it however we want to. But then the limbs below it kind of have, they're kind of constrained to one angle of rotation. And so that'll allow us to animate this object kind of flying around and doing its own thing, and then the arm underneath it kind of reacting to that, especially considering there's a weight on the bottom of it. So this sort of hierarchy here is called a forward kinematic hierarchy, or not hierarchy, it's a forward kinematic chain of joints. So if we look at the topmost arm, which is arm 1, let's just look at the entire hierarchy of the object here. We have this A group, which is actually just an invisible group that we can use to place the object if we wanted to, but let's not worry about that. The platform is its own mesh, and if I move that, you'll see that if I rotate that, all of the arms underneath it follow with it, and that is because, just like any folder structure inside of an operating system, you'll see that each of the arms are kind of below that. Okay, and so if I rotate this next arm down, the arms below it go with it, right? However, if I rotate this one, arm 2, you'll see that arm 1 doesn't go with it. And so this is just how you would expect a hierarchy to work, right? This is how, if you are playing with Tinker Toys or something like that, this is how a hierarchy works, and this is actually how the hierarchy of your own arm works. And this is because this motion of this final piece in the hierarchy is controlled by rotation from all of the objects above it in the hierarchy. This is called forward kinematics, okay, or FK for short. So there's another type of rotation, and we won't really talk about that very much, at least not in this exercise, but it's called IK, and that stands for inverse kinematics. And inverse kinematics is when you can grab the end connector, or the end of the hierarchy, and by moving it, the entire arm moves with it. It's actually really easy and quick to pose, but it has a lot of limitations on how your animation works with that. So let's go ahead and grab everything here. I'm just going to sort of zero this back out just so we can start working with this. And let's talk about how animation works with forward kinematics, because obviously I can sit through here and I can manually go through here and pose this arm, let's say something like that, and if I'm pretty happy with that, I can select the arm and hit S. And of course I'm on frame 61, I meant to do it on frame 1, hit S, and we've just sort of nailed down a keyframe there in that position. I'll go ahead and go to frame, let's say 15, and I can grab all of them together and rotate them, and you'll see that I get rotation with all of them. So if I just have all of them selected at the same time, and I can do that just by marquee selecting everything, I can rotate everything and get completely different pose with this. I guess it's very quick to sort of pose in the way I want that arm to move, right? And so I could pretty quickly go through here and just do this with everything. And you want to make sure you're selecting all of the pieces when you do. Sorry. And so I can pose it like this. Interesting how the motions are actually getting a little bigger. I'm actually going to pull back on that just a little bit. Make sure I got a keyframe on that, and then frame 45, maybe it's dying down just a little bit. And so this is not intended to really show a realistic motion just yet. I'm just kind of setting some keyframes just so we can see how this works. And this seems pretty self-evident, right? Like how this motion would work. And so if we look at the keyframes now and we just play that, it does kind of feel like an arm swinging back and forth. Unfortunately, it feels like a very robotic arm. It feels very stiff and rigid, and it's not very organic or even really visually pleasing to look at. It feels very boring. It's very drab. Okay, so part of the reason for this is because, most of the reason for this is because everything is sort of starting and stopping at the same time. Okay, we set a keyframe on frame 1, and on frame 15, and on frame 30, 45, 60, and we see that all the motion sort of happens, it all starts and stops and changes directions on the same exact keyframes together. And that's really nice as a way to organize your animation. It's actually how pose-to-pose animation works. But we need to now kind of go back and loosen it up a little bit. We need to kind of talk about how to make this feel less rigid and robotic. Okay? So one of the easiest ways and one of the nicest elements of this FK chain is that we can do this some just by offsetting our keyframes. So if I grab these lower 3, I'm not going to touch the upper part of the arm, and I just highlight all my keyframes here and I shift them by 1 frame, and I do this all the way down the hierarchy, shift the next one by 1 frame, and this last one by 1 frame. You'll see now that if I grab the entire chain, what happens is, the keys are offset from each other down the hierarchy, and if we watch this, it feels a little looser now. It feels like it's kind of overshooting a little bit. It still feels a little stiff and rigid though. It still doesn't feel completely organic. So I can do it in another frame. I can select each of these, drag it another frame, again, how I'm doing this, I'm just holding shift and then middle mouse button dragging on my timeline to select all that. And so now if you look at all my keys, you'll see that they're each 2 frames apart and offset from each other. And when we watch that, it's feeling much more loose and like fluid, right? So this is called lead and follow. This is a way of saying that certain body parts or certain objects in a hierarchy lead the motion and other parts follow, right? And so this doesn't have to be the way we do this. I'm going to undo as far as it'll let me, so I can get this back to where I was. Okay, so I think this is back where everything was looking robotic, right? We could do the opposite, right? We could actually have, instead of this upper part leading, we could have this lower part leading. And if we did that, I'm sorry, I'm doing this incorrectly. Grab the, let's see, the top 3, but leave this one first, and drag all of these back, and do the opposite here. So I'm now, the higher up the hierarchy, the later your keyframe happens. Okay, if we do that, then it's going to kind of do a little bit of a different motion. At this point, now it feels like the ball is like pulling it a little bit. And if you want to see that even more exaggerated, we can continue to offset even more. Doing it wrong. And then you'll really see that it feels like the ball is like pulling it around, right? And so that's probably not what we would really want. It almost feels like it's playing backwards because we would be so used to seeing this thing dangle. But imagine instead that something's got a hold of this, like something's pulling the ball around at the bottom and causing that motion to happen. Okay, so this is called lead and follow again. So at this point, the rest of the hierarchy is following the ball, which is leading the motion. And so that's just how motion works. Usually there is a source of the force. I'm going to undo this, and I'm not rhyming that on purpose, it's just a coincidence. There's usually a source for forces that cause motion to happen in any object. If you are walking or stepping around, then you're pushing on the ground with the muscles in your legs. And so usually the source of that is your hips. So your hips are the first things that move. And so that leads your spine, and your spine will move around as sort of a following gesture with the from the hips motion. So, but that doesn't mean that this has to be how the only way that we do this, okay? Because it's kind of a very hard to plan option, right? We can also keyframe some of this in. So let's say that for this move here, I know how I want this motion to look. I know that this lower part is moving first, right? And I know that I want these parts below it to kind of drag behind it. And so I'm actually just going in here in between this motion, and I'm just setting another keyframe that manually makes that happen the way I want it to. So you'll see that. Okay, so now it actually feels like that's dragging a little bit again. And then when we get here to the top, I know that it's all going to change directions and come back, but not all at the same time, right? This piece is hitting up here on frame 15 and then changing directions. But that part finished rotating first, and so all of these other pieces below it maybe haven't received that information yet. Okay, so I can have those drag behind a little bit more, and in fact I can even go up here right before it hits, right here, and I can even build in little bits of motion, maybe something like this. So maybe like right here I can have this overshoot like this. And so now, without really offsetting any keyframes at all, I'm just kind of manually keying in this overshoot. I can really make this animation look exactly the way I want to, and I'm really dragging this arm behind. And so if we watch this, so let's say that we want this to feel like it really hits this pose, you know, and kind of overshoots again. Then again, I can grab these curves and really twist them past this and make it look like what happened is, you know, the lower arm or the uppermost arm hit there, changes directions, but the rest of it hasn't caught up with it yet. And so we get this kind of overshooting motion as this piece changes directions and starts returning back in this direction. These other pieces are still continuing forward. And so you can just kind of build some of this into your motion and into your poses. Now, this doesn't mean that this is all of the work either. You may still want to go back after this and do a little bit of cleanup. And so I'm actually just setting a lot of keyframes to make this look exactly the way I want it to. But you know, you can still offset stuff a little bit in your graph editor and in your timeline to still get a little bit more overshoot, and you're definitely going to want to still go in and clean up your curves. So now if we look at this, so the posing method, I had a lot more control on exactly how this looks, right? But what I would want to do now is go in and make sure that my curves are doing what I want them to do. So let's say that, and it's very few curves in this, we'll look at this, and this is my rotation of my uppermost arm. It's this top piece right here. And so it starts rotating kind of slowly and then kind of speeds up a little bit, settles out, kind of comes back here, but then you'll notice it kind of sticks for a second there. It just flattens out. And so we don't want that. So I'm just going to kind of have it continue to overshoot a little bit again. Maybe to that. What does that do? That's not bad. And so we can still just kind of make little changes to this to kind of make it do exactly what we want it to do. And if there's something in here we want it to do that it's not doing, you know, we can change it, we can shift it. So let's look at this curve now and see what it's doing. So we got this rotation, and then it kind of starts to change directions here too, but just a little bit more slowly. Maybe what I want is I want it to overshoot just a little bit more and then start coming back. And so I can add additional keys in here by going to Keys and Add Key Tool. I just have to select the curve I want to add a key to, and then I middle mouse click to insert the new keyframe. And so I can actually continue having it go a little past that. And so if I watch this now, I can hold K to scrub. Okay, so we're still getting, this is nice because we're getting a lot more of this whip action in it. And so here it sort of stops its rotation and changes direction pretty quickly. Maybe I'll just insert one more keyframe. Just keep it going a little bit further past that, right? And so I can continue going down the chain, and you'll see that I'm just kind of looking for areas that maybe doesn't look like it's making sense. Like this one kind of gets there kind of early and kind of flattens out a little bit. So let's see how that looks if I do that. Okay, so maybe what I want is I want this to happen. I want that to continue to stay up there a little longer. Okay, and so you actually see what I'm doing is I'm offsetting individual keyframes. So there's something like that. And maybe at this point here, maybe it just didn't go up high enough. Maybe I wanted something like that. So it really feels like it's dragging back down. And so at this point I may even want to start looking into how this affects my tangents. Does this drag more here? And if so, when I get to this point here, when I change directions right here, it starts returning pretty quickly, and maybe that's not accurate. Maybe I still want to go in here and add another curve and let it just drag back just another frame or two. And then it kind of catches up here pretty quickly, doesn't it? So maybe we'll keep dragging back a little bit more here and here. And so I'm putting a lot more drag into this bottom piece, right? And so it's getting these sort of these flippy motions at the end, right? And then I could go in here and I could even just consider offsetting this bottom one if I wanted to, just make that whole thing happen a little later. Let's see how that looks. That may break it. I think it actually makes it look a little too light, so let's undo that. Okay. And so the fact that it overshoots that far, you know, if that's part of what's making it look a little too light, then I can pull back on this a little bit if I need to. And so we overshoot. But we definitely want it to look like the ball is sort of dragging behind, okay, and kind of getting there a little later. So here it's kind of flipping forward a little early. So I'm actually going to continue to drag that back a bit more like this. And that way when we hit here we can overshoot a little bit. Add key. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to have to drag this one. Oh. It's supposed to just be, oh come on, my move shortcut key wasn't working, so that's because cap box was on. And so you see what I'm doing is I'm just making this happen exactly the way I want it to. And so that's kind of the I mean, if you get nothing else from any of my classes, it's that you're the animator, you're in control. Now this maybe isn't exactly what I'm going for. Maybe I want this to look heavier, and this feels a little more floppy. But I just kind of wanted to show you the ability the ability of overlap you can get out of this. So in the next video, I'll probably actually just do a complete walkthrough of this animation and post that up there. And so that will be something for you to watch and get an idea about how to move forward on this next project. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.